Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Everything Marvel Podcasts. Today we want to go into the details of Infinity War. Here's your warning, spoiler alert. We're going to talk about the movie. We're going to talk about everything that happens in the movie. So if you don't want to know, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you should turn it off now. Like right now, I don't know why you're still listening. We're going to talk about it. We're going to spoil it for you. Kit, were you able to pick your heart up off the floor as you walked out of the theater? I wasn't. I was confused, dazed even, like, what's happening? Where is this going? There's this movie and this movie planned. How are they going to come back from this? I don't want to go into the theories of how they're going to fix things right now. I just want to talk about the movie in general because so much happened. It's hard to even wrap your mind around it. I'm going to have to go watch it again to see if I've missed any things. Thanos got all the stones. He snapped his fingers. Half of the universe just disintegrated right there, just in front of our eyes, just into dust. Half of the Avengers, half of everything we knew just disintegrated. So who died? Like, if you notice, none of the original Avengers disintegrated. We'll get into that in a second. I didn't think Loki would be the first one to go. I didn't think he would. I thought he would switch sides. I honestly thought that, from his connection to Thanos in the original Avengers, he would somehow spare him and he would be saved. But it was a noble play, trying to stab him at the last second. But seeing as he already had one stone, the Power Stone, I just don't think it was a smart move. Obviously, it wasn't. Heimdall, that was hard for me because my money was that Heimdall had the other stone. And I really liked his character. His character was awesome. He didn't get the due diligence. He didn't get the justice I thought his character deserved. He has an awesome sword and he's the cool powers and he, protected Asgard, which is gone now. So he's kind of irrelevant. But anyway, I hated to see him go that early in the movie. Gamora, what a more painful way to go than your adopted father just tossing you over the cliff and sacrificing you to get his eternal power, everything he wanted. He just tossed you over the cliff. He's like, see you later. That was a hard one. Speaking of that, when they show up to that planet that no one knew the stone was on, I had no idea. But anyway, they show up there. Guess who's there? Red Skull. We called that. We said that some of the villains would come back. I thought they would be like resurrected and be on his team. But the more you think about it, if you go back to Captain America, the First Avenger, he wasn't killed. He was teleported. I'm going to go back and check that scene out at some point. But he was teleported away when the Tesseract did what it did to him. He wasn't destroyed. He was teleported, obviously, to this place, and he's been there ever since, which has been a while because that was before Steve Rogers came out of the ice. That was way back in I think it was one of the wars. But he was there. That was awesome. I thought it was really cool. Let's go into some more people who died. Vision. That was tough. Not only did his girlfriend try and destroy the stone in his head, she didn't want to. That was tough. But I knew that, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, I knew that when Thanos got the time stone, it would be over because he could essentially undo anything that had been done. So it's like, how do you fight that at that point? It's the point of no return because literally he can go that future. No, we're going to change that. He can just. So when she destroyed that, I'm sitting there going, no, wait, he's got the time stone. Wait a minute. So that version of Vision's death was more agonizing because you see all the neurons in his head just yank the stone out and you had to watch him die again. So that was tough. Now, to the characters who actually just disintegrated, they're all kind of the second phase guys, the guys that we had seen maybe once or twice and were ready to see more of. Most of them disintegrated, and that kind of kicks you right in the chest. Black Panther, we were ready for another sequel. That was one of the best ones in this phase and probably one of the best ones of the series in my opinion because it was just so radically different. But anyway, he disintegrates right there in front of half of the people fighting with him. Their king disintegrated right there, and they're just like, what do we do? Spider-Man, that was agonizing to watch him sit there with Iron Man and just, I don't want to go. He's hugging him and he knows it's happening. That's the hard part. The other guys are kind of like, whoosh, and it just happened. But somehow Spider-Man kind of knew, I guess it was his Spidey sense. He knew, and he just trying to get Tony to save him. Tony was powerless. What could he do? He's nothing he could do at this point. That was, oof. tearjerker moment. Doctor Strange, I didn't remember, but yes, he also disintegrated. I kind of blame it on him because he told Tony, he said earlier in the movie, he said, I will not hesitate. If it's between you or the boy or the stone, protecting one of them, I will protect the stone. He didn't. He made a deal with Thanos. He gave him the stone, and then Thanos spared Tony after Tony got stabbed with that sword. That was tough too. You thought Tony was going to go right there, but I think miraculously he makes it. Winter Soldier, this group right here was one of the hardest for me. Winter Soldier and Falcon, just right there together, just boom, boom. And it's like, those are two of my favorite characters, and just gone like that. They're two of the guys who can take over Captain America's mantle when he fully steps down. I feel like he's halfway stepped down in this movie. He doesn't introduce himself as Captain America. He's just, Steve Rogers, when people talk to him. I think only one time he got referred to as Captain America, and I think that's when Vision said, "Thank you, Captain." Scarlet Witch, she just disintegrates. She was just coming into her power. I mean, you got a little view of her full potential to just control things with her power, her aura, whatever it is. Just throw them around in that whole battle. That was awesome. And she's gone. The Guardians, almost all of the Guardians are gone now. Groot, Star-Lord, Drax, Mantis, all gone. I think Rocket Raccoon was the only one to make it. Technically Gamora was killed a different way. She didn't disintegrate. So looking at who's still around: Captain America, Steve Rogers, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, Hulk, and Rhodey, War Machine, Rocket, and Nebula. So if you notice that first group here, it is the original Avengers. I thought, when I first was looking around, I was like, wait a minute, this is the original crew. But I think there's a reason that the original core group made it, didn't disintegrate. So what could they have done differently? Like Doctor Strange said, out of all the billions of futures he saw, when he was kind of floating and he was messing with the time stone, and he could see into the future, which is, you think he has the time stone, you don't think about him seeing to the future, you think about always him seeing the past. But in theory, he could. So out of all those he saw, he said there was only one that they could win. The part where they were on Titan, they had Thanos kind of pinned down. Mantis was on his head, trying to put him to sleep. We talked about that too. We said Mantis, in the fights, if someone were to take Mantis and Thanos one-on-one, the only way she have a chance is if she were able to get on him in his head and subdue him. And that's basically what was happening. The rest of the team was holding him down physically while she was messing with his head, trying to put him to sleep. And Star-Lord is the one that messed up. He got too emotional when he figured out that he killed Gamora to get the stone. If they would have thought that through a little more, Tony tried to stop him. Tony's like, no, focus. We've almost got that. They were pulling the gauntlet off his hand. Could they have pulled it off? More than likely. I think they could have. They had 3 or 4 or 5 different guys holding him down from different angles. They could have taken the gauntlet and maybe disappeared real quick, got out of there. We didn't really get to see any true good fights with Thanos before he got any stones. The first part of the movie, he already had the Power Stone. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute too. The other way I think they could have won, they could have actually gotten him when they were in nowhere, and Gamora runs up and, stabs him from the back, kind of catches him off guard, and he's already got the Reality Stone. I feel like if they could have maybe beat him there, because he already had the Tesseract, he had the Space Stone, and he had the Power Stone at that point. If they could have beaten him there and gotten the Reality Stone first, that's when he was really starting to mess with people's minds, like making them see things and turning them into strange things and just really crippling them before he could even get at him close enough to do any damage. So maybe had they beat him there, they could have done something different. So also back to Bruce Banner. Why couldn't he transform into the Hulk? Why, the couple of times he tried to, he was like fighting to get the Hulk to come out. And the Hulk kept telling him no, is what he was saying. He was basically arguing. It was like he was schizophrenic. He was arguing with himself, Hulk, come out. And it's like, what happened, I think, and this is one of the theories I talked about, that the Hulk was terrified of Thanos because the very first scene when they're fighting, he takes him to town, really. And again, he had the Power Stone right off the bat. So did that help him? I don't know. He didn't look like he actually used the Power Stone. He was just fighting him, going toe to toe with him, basically. And I wouldn't say took him down, but he did beat him down. He beat him pretty good. That's probably the worst we've seen Hulk get beat, like in a fight. So I think that's what made the Hulk scared of Thanos. And so he wouldn't come back out in the rest of the movie. Some people had talked about that was Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster armor, and it makes sense. He's used to being around in that larger body, and he even said, "That's like I'm the Hulk," But he couldn't fully control that armor to the full extent, so it was kind of a waste at that point. But he didn't disintegrate. He's still around. Again, he's one of the core guys. And the other thing that bothered me is there was, these times where, Gamora told Peter, she said, "Listen, if he takes me, I want you to kill me." And Peter's, he's "I can't do that." And had he have been able to do that, Thanos wouldn't have found the stone he was looking for had that went through. And so he wouldn't have been at full power, which I don't think anyone really was ready for Thanos to get all 6 stones in this first movie, because it's kind of like a part one and part two, Also the scene where Scarlet Witch she's fighting with herself. She knows what she should do. She should have taken Vision out. And going back to Vision a little bit, in all the trailers, we didn't know the extent of Vision's involvement. He was basically at half power the whole movie. From the first time we saw him fight, he got stabbed. And so he was injured pretty much from there on out. He wasn't at full strength. And I think that helped Thanos, honestly, because he's one of the stronger ones. I think some of the stronger players were taken out. Vision was taken out. Hulk was taken out. Thor was out for a large part of the movie trying to make his hammer. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Vision, we thought in the trailers, that maybe the stone got pulled out early and that he was just human, but somehow he and Wanda were like in love, and they were taking these trips together, and he could make himself human. Even Tony said something about he's evolving. They don't really know what he is 100% anyway. They kind of created him into a robotic body, but his mind is changing, his body is changing. They don't really understand what they've created, honestly. But anyway, we didn't know what was happening. And we thought when he ended up in Wakanda, there's one scene where Black Panther's sister has like a hologram projection of him and his head and everything. We didn't know if they were trying to repair the damage that had been done when the stone was taken out to bring him back to life. But now we know that it was actually, they were trying to preemptively take it out so that they could destroy it. And maybe had they had more time, we don't really know how far away she was from getting it out when they got to him, So it could have taken her another hour, but the Wakandan people fought as hard as they could. The Avengers fought as hard as they could, but there was just nothing they could do at that point. And it was a hard choice for Wanda. You could tell when she finally decided this is what she had to do. She went into battle where she could have stayed back and protected him maybe a little bit longer, whatever. Those giant things that dug up under the ground and came at everybody, she had to go down. She knew she had to help, and she did. She really helped against that. But had she stayed, maybe something she could have stopped. She could have stopped the guy from the Black Order. She could have given Shuri some more time. We'll never know. But she was in agony when she had to actually, do it. She was completely against it when Vision first brought it up. She couldn't stomach the idea of killing him, her boyfriend, her love, basically. We don't know the extent of their love story. We've gotten little snippets of it, but she couldn't take that idea. She was against it, just like Star-Lord was against him thinking about, her telling him that he might have to kill her. When it came down to it, she was ready to do it. I think she waited too long, honestly, because there was one point, Thanos, she's got one hand shooting the stone, and then she puts the other hand on it, and so she's kind of double teaming with her own power, the stone, trying to blow it up. And then she has to switch. Thanos is coming at her from the other side. So does that weaken her power? Could she have potentially, if she started earlier, had blown it up quicker before Thanos got there. That's probably all a moot point because, again, Thanos had the time stone. He could do what he did, basically. He could say, no, let's replay this whole part that just happened. And there's so many questions in my mind about the time stone. When they mess with time with it, is it just this section of the world? Is it the entire world? What's the full extent of that power? I don't know. I don't understand it. I would like to figure it out more because Wanda kind of was there. She was coherent while he was it seemed like he was just going back in time where Vision was, basically, to bring Vision back long enough to yank the stone out of his head. Good thing that happened in the movie, the Black Order, I believe all of those guys were destroyed. They had some really good fight scenes when Black Widow and Cap were taking them on in Scotland, I think is where they were. I'm pretty sure all those guys got taken out, some in more gruesome ways. So Thanos is pretty much by himself. A couple of lingering questions in my mind. What does Thanos do now? I mean, he's accomplished his goal. It cost him his daughter. He does show a little remorse of having to kill his daughter to accomplish his goal. But how hard does it really hurt him? Somebody asked him, I forget who it was in the movie, but what's your end game? Once you do this, what do you? And he said, well, I'll just sit back and enjoy the peace or something like that. And it's like, you've destroyed half of the galaxy and you just want to rest now? Like, you just want to chill because you killed all these people? Like, is that, he really in his mind thinks he's doing a good thing? And was discussing this with my wife. People think a lot of villains think they're doing a noble deed in their mind, and that just shows how messed up their mind can be when they have to destroy so much in their mind for it to be perfect. Another lingering question in my mind is Thor. I like the fact that they brought his hammer back. Well, they didn't bring his hammer back, but he created a new weapon. And I like the fact that it was, made partially from Groot. I thought it was a really cool addition to it. Recreating a weapon would digress the character. I don't think it did that at all. It showed a whole new level of determination, a whole level of fight in Thor's character to go to all this trouble to convince Rocket to go with him and to convince the guy to start the forge back up. And what about the dwarf guy showing up? We knew that he was going to be in the movie. What's his name? Peter. I can't think of his last name. From Game of Thrones. We knew he was going to be in there. People were talking about it. Nobody knew what he was going to be, but I thought that was a really interesting role for him. But getting him to start the forge back up to create a new weapon for him. The other question I have about that whole section is when you see that picture, it's almost like a mold of the Infinity Gauntlet. Did Thanos go there and make him create a new Infinity Gauntlet? That's lingering in my mind. Does that have something to do with the multiple gauntlets we've seen in the timeline in the MCU? That's in the back of my head somewhere, and I don't know how to quite resolve that one yet, but maybe we'll get there at some point. I thought it was really cool for his character, to go there, and he had to endure that pain of holding that open so that the power would travel to the forge and, melt the metal and everything to make his new weapon, which was really awesome. He come into battle and he changed everything when he got to the battle in Wakanda, and he thought he was ready for Thanos. He was furious. That's one more thing that I think could have potentially changed the outcome. Instead of slicing him in the chest like he did, maybe he lopped the hand off, at the gauntlet. Maybe he lops his head off. And he changed like that, and the outcome would have been different. He wouldn't have been able to think long enough to snap his fingers and destroy all that he destroyed. I liked the movie. I liked the post-credit scene. There was only one. A lot of people left, and I'm like, guys, have you not seen Marvel movies? What are you doing? Stay. But I always Google it, even when I go to a different movie. Even if it's not a Marvel movie, I Google it really quick. Is there a post-credit scene? I really liked it. That showed that it really was happening. People were disintegrating, not just in Wakanda. Maybe it took time to travel to New York, whatever the force is that's taking away half of the lives in the world. I hate that Nick Fury had to show up at the very end. I was hoping he would show. There was theories that he would show earlier. I mean, it's Avengers. You can't have Avengers without Nick Fury, can you? And I really hated it that he and Colby Smulders' character both disintegrated. So I liked the fact that they tied in Captain Marvel right there at the end. That's the little symbol that you saw in his little pager thing. That's Captain Marvel's symbol. I like that they tied her in. I wanted her to actually cameo, just to, actually show up to give people a ray of hope, because there was none at the end. There was zero hope, nada. Everybody, I think their stomachs were sitting in their hearts were down in their stomach. They couldn't move. They couldn't fathom what just happened, And I liked, on a side note, how when it said Avengers Infinity War right at the end and that started disintegrating, I was like, come on, guys, you're kicking us in the gut right after all this happened. We know people are disintegrating. You can't just roll the credits. Come on, get it over with. I really think that Captain Marvel holds some key to the future of the MCU. And also, Captain Marvel is set back in like the 90s. So it's definitely before any of the more current movies anyway. Which, a couple other questions. Where has Hawkeye been? He was in the posters for the advertising. And I think that was just to throw us off. Marvel has done so many things with this movie to throw us off. Like that being one. Second one being how in the trailer, when we see Thanos punch down at Cap and he grabs it, they took some of the stones out. They didn't want us to know that he had the majority of the stones, if not all. No, he was still missing the one at that point. I mean, this is just shambles we're given here at the end of the movie. Just destroyed our perfect Marvel MCU picture we have built over 10 years, more or less. I think it's mid 2019 before we see the next Avengers movie and figure out this mess that we're given. It's just, oh man, it was just, oh, it hurts so bad. But anyway, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.